Alright, so the ship is finished now. There's only one little technique that I've added since the last video that I want to take you guys through because I think it turned out really cool. And then we're going to get into photographing the ship to at least the highest quality that I know how to do, and then I can share it with you guys. There are some really great tutorials out there online, but I'm just going to go through what I know here. So to start off, let's get into this technique that I have right here. So I was feeling that the ship looked a little bit empty towards this back area right here. I'm not really sure what it was missing, but I decided to add these flying buttresses that further connect the engines to the main body, and then also add just another bit of color there and another angle. You can see how they connect to the body at two different angles. They're angled up and then they're angled sideways with those cheese grater pieces and then regular cheese slopes. This took a lot of effort to figure out. I did some math to figure out the exact angles that everything needed to be at, or the exact lengths that would construct that right triangle that this flying buttress would, you know, be the hypotenuse of. So I ended up having to pull the engines out a whole nother brick to complete that triangle properly. And then once that second angle was added with the cheese grater piece, it just became a whole bunch more complicated, but it ended up working out really well, I think. They're connected with this little double clip thing so that you can easily get two axes of motion to make that angle just fit really snug. I think this is pretty heavily inspired by a lot of the things that Nick Trota's done in a bunch of his starfighters. It looks a lot like that, and it's just such a clean looking line that I was really happy with. So for now, we can get into photographing the ship. I have to use this camera that I'm recording on, so I'm going to be switching over to my phone now, so sorry if the video quality drops or something like that. Okay, so I've cleared off the table, I've got the mock out, so I think we're ready to get started. I have my window open and it's about midday, so hopefully as much light as possible is coming in. Luckily for me, my room is pretty well lit, so we're not going to be doing that much extra stuff to light this mock. There are some great tutorials online that I'll link below that I think are more helpful on smaller scale mocks and stuff, but I think this further applies to even bigger and bigger mocks. The lights in my room are around 5600 Kelvin, which is the same temperature as the light coming in from outside, so that should be able to mix pretty well. I have those lights all around my room so that hopefully it's pretty evenly lit. We're just going to be adding light by trying to reflect it and just fill in a couple gaps with some diffused lamps. I would recommend you try and find a DSLR or just a camera that you can control the settings on, but the image quality you can get out of even a super entry-level DSLR that you can borrow from family or friends or whatever is exponentially better than what you can get out of a cell phone or something. And then you're also going to need a tripod just for a couple of the things that we're going to be doing. Okay, so we want to do a couple things here. First of all, we want to be shooting in RAW plus JPEG photos, just because we want the RAW version. I like having the JPEG version. We're going to want to be in auto light balance. Next, we want to set our ISO to 100 for the lowest amount of grain possible. Next, we're going to set our aperture to f/22, or at least the lowest that's possible, so that we can have everything in focus, because there's going to be some depth to this picture. And then finally, we want to fill in the rest of the light with a really long shutter speed of a couple seconds. In this case, probably around like 8 seconds-ish looks pretty good, so we can do some testing after the fact. And then finally, we want to set our focal length. In this case, I'm going to do around 30 millimeters because that's going to be roughly eyesight based on the crop factor of this camera. Eyesight's roughly 50 millimeters and the crop factor on this camera is around 1.6. I'm thinking eyesight's going to give us the best look. Okay, so in addition to the regular light, as I mentioned, we're going to be trying to reflect light up into the ship with this reflector here. You could do the same kind of effect with just a big white poster board or something like that, but I'm going to show you some before and after pictures of what kind of effect this has on the overall image. I think it's going to make it look a lot more pleasant to look at. The only other place that I think is really lacking in light is probably the front of the ship, which is, of course, this side where there's not really a lot of light coming from. So I'm only going to be adding one light, which is this lamp that I've diffused with just a piece of paper, just so the light isn't too harsh and it looks as even as possible. But otherwise, I think we're just about ready to take the main picture for the ship. Okay, so you'll see that I've tried to just capture, I guess, every side of the smock, including, you know, the side that's facing us, and the top, just to make sure everything is visible. I've set my focus right about in the middle of the ship, And then I've also set a little timer just to reduce on any possible vibrations. So yeah, here we go. And then I just got to come over here and try and get the right angle with the reflector here. I think that's going to be about right. Just got to hold it for the next 10 seconds. Hope that the picture comes out good. So now we can head back to the computer and import the raw photos and edit them and get them looking all nice. Okay, so I have my photos here, JPEG, and the CR2 is the raw version, so we're going to drag that into Photoshop so we can get this raw editor here. I usually try and edit off of the computer rather than the SD card because that's a little bit sketchy. So we can start by pulling up the shadows a little bit so we can get some more detail in here. And then this white right here is out of control. So pull down the highlights a little bit. And then I like to kind of increase the clarity. I think that gives us more contrast, and I don't really like what the contrast does exactly when you add it normally. A little bit less. And then I'm thinking this white in this back area here doesn't really look quite right. It doesn't look the same as the front. So we want to clean that up as best we can. We're going to do that with the adjustment brush. Just be real careful. So I'm just going to blast the exposure so I can see what I'm doing, and then go back and change the settings there. I think that'll pretty much do the job for this selection. So we're going to get rid of this exposure thing that we did here. And we're just going to try and change the color of the white here just to make this look a little bit more like the rest. Increase the highlights a little bit. Maybe increase the exposure by like just a tad. And I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, we can save this image now. Save it as SHIP1 should work. And we'll just save that. We'll open this photo in regular Photoshop because now we're going to cut out the background because I know some people like to do that. I'm not sure if I would have done that outside of this video. Maybe because it was a ship I would, but normally I usually just like to leave just the plain background. I think it looks kind of natural and just casual. So the tool we're going to use to just select our ship is this one right here, this quick selection tool. And you just kind of got to go at it for a few minutes to just perfect the selection that it gets. If you were to shoot your MOC on a big plain background, this would be much easier and probably more accurate. Like the colors that you see in the little, aberrations around the object will look more natural. And in areas like this where this color is like almost identical, this is going to be kind of hard. But I didn't really want to set up a whole like curtain or something to shoot this on. So yeah, I'm just going to go with this for a little while, and yep. Okay, so I think that's pretty much good enough. So now we're gonna just add a layer mask with that selection there, and there we go. So now we can take a big color. I think I'm just gonna do a plain background for the main shot rather than like space or whatever. I think just, I don't know, maybe looks a little bit more classy or something. It's really difficult to make the space look authentic or whatever you might say. It just always looks obviously like fake, which of course it is, but we're gonna want to clean this edge up a little bit here. I'm just gonna cut that off. Goodbye. So yeah, a little minor gradient I think looks pretty cool. Yeah, that pretty much does it. Obviously you want to take a whole bunch of angles of the ship, and I'm not gonna do this whole Photoshop process for all of them. I'm just gonna edit the colors and exposure for all of them, and then so I think that pretty much concludes this video. I hope you guys learned something, even though I'm totally not qualified to teach people about photography or Photoshop. And yeah, check out my gunship build blog series because I've been doing some crazy work on that lately, and that's gonna be turning out really sick. So I'll see you guys there.
and yeah, later.